Good evening. Good evening. Did you all take your bread and butter? Thank you, Bruce, for going to San Francisco especially to bring us some high quality bread. Florida indeed is good for many things. Bread is not among of them. I heard that it's because of the humidity and the other things. I don't know. Sorry? Right, so that's definitely part of it. The main reason for the bread is to tell you what we're doing next week. We're going to talk about bread and conclude with baking of matzahs, which has a much bigger story than we think. Okay, matzah is important, way beyond Passover. Okay, but that's for next week. Today, we're talking about the Jewish people as the people of the book. And we will look at the historical evolution of our writing, reading, and studying, all text related. So before we even start looking at the sources, what was the first form of writing in ancient Israel? Chiseling on stone, right? We still use the phrase in English, it's not written in stone, right? Because, and it's important, because what does it mean that it's not written in stone? Can be changed, permanent, it's right. So why do you think God wanted to write the core of the covenant in stone? No change, to show the magnitude, the stability of this covenant, right? So this is the main explanation, as we will see. Now, when we say stone, to be accurate, we refer to two different things. One is stones, and by stone, I'm talking about different kinds of stones, like marble, like granite, depends on where they did it, the very hard stone, but they also wrote a lot on clay. Okay, so when we say stone, we include even the clay. So we go from very hard granite to clay tablets that can be shattered. And as we speak, probably somebody in the area today of Iraq, of Syria, I would not really travel in Syria, even as an archaeologist, but in this area of the ancient Near East, keep discovering clay writings from even pre-biblical era. So they were not written by the Israelites, the Jews, but in Mesopotamia. And we learn a lot from it because we know how to read it. Okay? I mean, it's not we, but scholars today know how to read it, and they keep finding these pieces, these shards of clay. Okay, so the first thing we have is clay, and I try to come up with some verses from the Torah and Bible, and even from the Talmud to go along with that. So the first one, do you have the main? Yeah, the second one is for you to have, because it's one of the most common question I'm asked. What is the oldest Torah that we have? What is the oldest Haggadah now? So I collected few ancient texts that we need to know, but we may or may not look at it later, but it's interesting for you to take home and to get familiar with it. Class 4, yes, thank you. So a Torah portion that we read a very short time ago, God said, I will give you the stone tablets and the teaching and the commandment. Okay, so after God gave Moses the terms of the covenant, right, the 10 commandments, first God gave it orally to Moses, and then he told him, go up Mount Sinai and receive it in writing, right? Not much different from today. Often you talk to someone, they make you a promise. Oh, I'll come in 2 weeks and I'll do this job for $7,000. Give it to me in writing, right? We say it all the time, because if it's not in writing, it's not worth so much. But that was very similar. So God said it orally, and everyone, okay, God, whatever he said, we'll do that. I said, no, not so fast. I'm going to give it to you written in stone, literally, right? And the first revelation, so we use two fancy English words for the event on Mount Sinai. One is revelation, the other one is theophany. Okay, theophany is when God appeared. Because when you think about it, in the entire Bible and later on, God was outside. Sometimes God revealed God's self to some people, normally through angels, in dreams, in different ways. But the event of receiving of the commandments, when Moses went to Mount Sinai, God appeared to the entire community. There is a very interesting book from the 11th century, written by Yehuda Levi. It's called the Kuzari, and it tells a story about a king of this kingdom. Actually, it's a real story. Historically, it's real. It was a small kingdom where today is somewhere in Russia or in that area. And the king decided to choose a new religion. So he invited a Jewish representative, a Christian one, and a Muslim one. And he chose Judaism. Some scholars said it's still very debatable that many of the Jews with the blonde hair and blue eyes are descendants of this large group of people who converted to Judaism. Because originally Jews came from the Middle East and they look more like me and not, okay? So, but that's, so, I mean, of course we traveled a lot, but that was one of the rare cases in which a large group of people converted to Judaism. But the reason I'm telling it to you is that after he interviewed the representatives of all religions, they asked him why Judaism. He said, because the other religions are based on one person. So Muhammad had his dream and he told about the dream that God told him. Jesus is story of one person, he got back. But in Judaism, the entire people saw God. Okay, so it's not somebody's story. It's not that he was doubting the stories, but still it's a story of one person rather than a whole nation that had the same experience. Okay, so it's not a dream or something like that, because we cannot have all of us exactly the same dream one night. Just an interesting anecdote to know. Now, we continue the second text here. Not only that Moses brought himself the two tablets, and you know the story, the first time he smashed the tablets because he was angry with the people, but then God told him, go back. And this is a very interesting and important thing to know. So the first tablet were written by God. Okay, it's very explicit in the text. God wrote it. Second time, God invited Moses up on Mount Sinai again and said, you shall write. Okay, so the content might be the same, but God said, now you're going to write. And you can do with it whatever you want, but I like the idea that we cannot really follow something that God writes. We need this human intervention. If it's written by human, we're all humans. But if when God wrote it, the second it got in contact with people, it smashed. When Moses wrote it, you know, it was by the people for the people. Okay, so that's an important thing to know, that the second tablets were written by Moses, dictated by God. Okay, So Moses carved it, not God. And what I'm saying now is a midrash. It's not in the Torah. It's one of my favorites, but it's not in the Torah. What did they do with the tablets? Where did they place them at the end? In the ark. Okay, in the Ark of the Covenant when they built the tabernacle. But this is a midrash that says that not only the complete set of tablets were placed there, God told Moses, tell the people to collect all the pieces, all the shards of the old tablets and put them in the ark. Because when we make a mistake, we can move on, but we're not going to forget it. Okay? So yes, we had it, we still carry it to show that, we have to learn from past mistakes, but also to know that we can overcome mistakes. We can move on. Okay? But God didn't say, oh, just forget about it. No, don't forget about it. Remember it. So Moses got finally the tablets, and let's read number 2. He took the book of the covenant. Now, when we use the word book here, book is a generic term for something written. Okay, book can be a scroll, book can be tablets, book can be anything. We will see later. Okay, so the word also in English, by the way, book is a generic thing. So we can, when we talk about what do we read during the festival of Purim? Purim, Megillah. Okay, so it's either the book of Esther or the scroll of Esther. Okay, because again, book is generic. And the 5 books of Moses. So that's a generic, but it's actually not 5 books, it's scrolls. Okay, so so he took the book of the covenant, the tablets, and read it in the hearing of the people. So what did he do with the written text on stone? He read it to the people. So first God said it orally, then carved it, then brought the written contract and read it. Okay? When we get a contract, when you bought, I don't know, even something small like a cell phone, if you need to read the contract, it will take you about 3 weeks, right? No, seriously, we don't. We just, okay, and we sign, and then if there is a prompt, but they know that we don't read, and there is no way that anyone would read. But over there, back then, it was really important. Okay, you say it, you write it, and then you read the written text to make it very clear. And I tried to collect more text that you will be familiar, and this is from the book of Nehemiah, that is one of the latest in the Bible. Moses wrote down the Torah, and then God told him, you shall read this Torah before all Israel. This is the reference that for us to read the Torah on a regular basis. You know, how many times a week traditionally we read the Torah? No? No? 4. Yeah. Saturday twice. Shachris and Mincha. No, it's I'll explain. When the people of Israel went to exile, believe it or not, their connection to Judaism weakened dramatically. They forgot Hebrew, they forgot a lot of the stuff, okay? Because that's what happens. After a generation or so, many of the traditions disappear. I should not eat and teach at the same time, but it's so good. I can eat this kind of bread instead of everything else. Sorry about it. They came back with very little knowledge. They came back from exile. Not all of them, but some people came back in order to revive the Jewish community in Israel or Judea at that time. And Nehemiah, the prophet, tells them, oh, you have now to read the Torah publicly because you have to familiarize the Torah. People have to know. So they instituted 4 readings, Monday and Thursdays, because these were the traditional market days. They knew that if they tell people, oh, you should come to the synagogue or something, yeah, maybe few will come. But if you take the Torah to where people are and everyone went to the market on Mondays and Thursdays, well, they're there. And then you call them at one point, okay, we're reading the Torah, gather here and let's read the Torah. Okay, so that's why we still do it Monday and Thursday. These are the regulars. I'm not talking about holidays, festival, Rosh Chodesh, which is the first day of the month, and other times. But on Shabbat, people did go to the synagogues. So in the morning, they read the portion. In the afternoon, they read the next week's portion. Okay? So when you come here, when we have 2 services on Shabbat, in the morning we read one portion, in the afternoon we read the next portion. So 2 kids can have a bar mitzvah the same day, but different portions between the morning and the afternoon. The next week begins Saturday afternoon. So every week has 4 readings. On Shabbat, you read today, and I'll be more specific, the entire portion. When I say portion, you know what I'm talking? Let me just explain. So when they wanted people to know the content of the Torah, they took the Torah. And by Torah now I mean only the 5 books of Moses, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and divided them to 54 sections. Each section is known as a portion. 54 because the Jewish calendar sometimes has 13 months. That's the Jewish leap year, okay? Because every month, Jewish month is shorter than, because it's a lunar calendar. So every few years we have 13 months, so you have more weeks, okay? Divided it to 54. This year is not a leap year, so this week, we're reading 2 portions. Okay, because we have too many portions, so few of them double up. In any case, so every week we begin a different one. We start on Simchat Torah at the end of Sukkot, and we continue. It's quite miraculous that everywhere in the world, when you go to a synagogue, we all read the very same portion. Okay, it's in old synagogues you go, there's still a plaque somewhere with the name of the portion. Today, we have an app. No, this app is amazing. It's the best $5 that I actually I didn't pay. It was a gift that I got. No, because people want to know, you cannot give me the date of your bat mitzvah and I'll tell you the portion. So it goes back easily or it goes forward. Oh, my daughter is she's 3.5, but I want to save Labor Day of 2035 or so. And what's going to be the portion? Okay, it's very simple with apps, but before that it was a little bit harder. On Shabbat, traditionally we read the entire portion. It's long. It's very long. It's several chapters. Monday, Thursday, Shabbat afternoon, we read only 3 aliyahs, okay, which is much shorter. We don't read the whole thing on Monday, Thursday. Why? Because people need to go to work. Because you go to the temple in the morning, just before work. So how long can the service be? Okay. There are other systems in the conservative movement and others, but that's the idea that started with Nehemiah. To read the Torah regularly for the people to know, which we'll talk about it later in a second. Later on, there was a question of, okay, it's nice, people know the Torah, but the Torah is only a small part of the Jewish Bible. The Jewish Bible has 2 other parts, right? The prophets and then the writings. How are people going to know what's going on there? And for that, they added the Haftorah. Okay, Haftorah is a reading on Shabbat that comes after the reading of the Torah. And it's taken from the prophets. Normally, they try to find some connection. So for this Torah portion that talks about the building of the tabernacle, the Haftorah is from First Kings that describe the building of the first temple by King Solomon. Okay, so there is a connection. Sometimes it's very clear, sometimes it's less clear. Okay, I want to continue. I want to read some. 4 from Ezra is really important here. Do you have any comments or questions? No, only specific chapters. The question was if we cover all the prophets with Haftorah, and the answer is not. The Haftorah is normally sort of a chapter of prophets. That's why the Haftorah is very problematic, because very often, if you don't know the context, if you're not familiar with the book, you just read a chapter and say, what? Okay. It's really for people who know and need a little reminder. Okay, so Haftorah is problematic, or sometimes it's easy to take things out of context with the Haftorah, because you have few verses, you don't know what came before, what came after. You don't really know the history of Isaiah, when he lived, who he was talking to, what kind of images he means, and you take things literally when you shouldn't, okay? So the prophets are much less learned by most people than the Torah. It changed mostly with the Reform movement and later with the Conservative that put much more emphasis on the Haftorah. The main reason is the whole idea of tikkun olam, of social action, a repair of the world. Because the main message of the Haftorah is taken from the prophets is social action, is how the kings, for the most part, were corrupt by not taking care of the poor, of the orphans, of the widows. How did they not have the right judicial system that exacted justice? Okay, so for the reform, wow, this is what we do. Think about it during the 1960s and all these riots of the civil rights. And Isaiah was just there. You didn't need to do much. Take the speeches of Martin Luther King and others. Just read from the prophets. That's all you need. Okay, that's why they spoke sometimes like prophets, because they thought that this was for them. So in certain times it worked, but today it's really hard to understand. That's the truth. So the shortened version of the Torah, and that's read, is that the same? Oh, let me clarify. So every portion of the Torah is divided to 7 sections. Each section, we call it today, colloquially, Aliyah. Aliyah literally means coming up. So when we invite somebody to read or to say the blessing before, they get an Aliyah. So here we call it Aliyah, but it's really 7 sections. So on Shabbat, we read all 7 sections, plus a little bit more. And on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat afternoon, we read only 3 sections. Okay, thank you for that. It was important to clarify. I didn't do a good job before to explain it. Unrelated, but where did the number 10 come from? That's a completely different question that I will answer. It's a good question and we need to know it, because in order to read the Torah publicly and to say the blessings before and after, we need a minyan, 10 people, right? Traditionally 10 men over the age of 13, okay? Where did the number came from? I'll give you, sorry? No, there is a whole explanation in the Talmud that I'm going to share with you. But first I'll tell you my conspiracy theory. I think 10 is a great number. If you go to the Torah and read the 10 commandments, good luck finding 10. There are no 10 commandments there, okay? You can count many. And even in some of the Christian 10 commandments and some denominations, different commandment than the Jew, because they came up with 10 and then they try to feed the text that has many more commandments. Or even the first one, what is the first commandment? I'm the Lord. What kind of a commandment is that? It's not a commandment, it's a statement. It's an introduction, okay? So, but they had the number 10 because we all like the number 10. You cannot find a better small number than 10, okay? And then, okay, 10 commandments. The Torah here, the verses that we read do not talk about 10 commandments, right? Or the book of the covenant. But here's the explanation in the Torah. The word for, in the Talmud, not in the Torah, sorry. The Torah never talks about minyan. That's an important thing to do. That came much later on. The word for a community, or a minyan, if you want. Minyan is the smallest number for a community, okay? To be a legal community for that purpose, is edah. Edah. There are some synagogues, if you travel, that is called Adat. Adat Israel, Adat whatever. You don't know any of this? I don't know if you travel or something. Means community, and Adat is community of, or congregation of, okay? Either community or congregation. There is a story in the book of Numbers about Moses, who sent 12 spies to tour the land before the people of Israel entered the land, okay? And these spies were described by the Hebrew word edah. So you're thinking, but he said that edah is 10, and now he's talking about the 12 tribes. Is he just misspeaking? But two tribes were good. Two spies were good, Joshua and Caleb. So the edah, it refers only to the 10 bad spies. So from there, the rabbis decided, since the word edah, we said there is a verse that said that God dwells among the edah of Israel. And then the word edah refers to the 10 spies. From there, they learn edah means minimum 10. Did I make any sense to you? But this is a very typical Talmudic way of arguing and thinking. We take one word from any context you want, and then you find the same word in a different context, and you say, since over there it meant 10, now we're going to read it over there as 10, okay? But I think that 10 just sounds right. If you want to think about the smallest number for congregation, 10 is a good choice. I would have chosen something like that. Probably you would have chosen 12 because you don't believe in the metric system. And there was not metric system in the Bible but 10 just sound good. But this is an ingenious idea that you need a congregation to perform a lot of the Jewish rites. It forced people to be together. Or it forced people, you go to a shiva and, oh, they need a minyan, I should show up, right? You don't really know the person and you plan, but oh, they may need a minyan. You don't think twice, you show up, okay? So sociologically, it was an ingenious idea. Still is, okay? Because now you can read the Torah whenever you want, to practice, to study by yourself. But to read it with the blessings for the sake of performing the mitzvah of reading Torah, you need 10 people. Same for Kaddish. Again, it's an ingenious idea. Nobody should say Kaddish by themselves, right? You lose someone, you should not be by yourself, even if you're not close to the people. I think that was one of the worst things during the pandemic. Yeah, I went with a video camera and then, or sometimes with jackets, and we do it, and we said that nobody was there. And, and everyone on their Zoom thing said the Kaddish. I mean, that's the best we could do. But when you have at least 10 people, it feels different. You're not alone, and you don't want to be alone. What I would do, I would definitely say Kaddish. But, so I'll tell you a story. When I went to very Orthodox yeshiva, we would go to cemeteries all the time because every grandparent, everyone would go every yahrzeit. It was not just lighting the candle at the house. You schlepped to the cemetery. And we live close enough. Did you live like that? Now, the first year after a person dies, it's easy to get a minyan, right? Because still you have friends, but when you have the 37th yahrzeit anniversary, who remembers, really, right? And it's hard. And sometimes let's get 10 people, especially if you're a small family or families that everyone spreads around. And I remember my super Orthodox rabbi, black hat, the whole thing, right? Said, you should assume that the cemetery has 10 Jews there. Okay? And it's not the law. You won't see it written anywhere. And some would be very angry. But I think you really realize that you go and you're 7 people because that's your family. And, and we didn't even count women back then, so it was even less. Okay, but how can you go to somebody's grave during their yahrzeit and not say Kaddish? So just assume that in the large cemetery there are 10 Jews.
I asked that question 19 years ago. And I thought to myself, you're not going to get it. You're going to wait till tomorrow.
If you are in a very Jewish area, right, that people go in and out of cemeteries all the time, the way it's in Israel or maybe some New Montefiore on Long Island and all these places that have gazillion cemeteries, you can wait maybe. And you can ask somebody to drive around and ask, hey, come here. And it happened. And I know, but there is a synagogue, or go to our cemetery on North Lake. Yeah, good luck. If there is no funerals scheduled, you can wait until the next day and you won't have. And in the synagogue, so yeah, you're not supposed to read the Torah. You're not supposed to say Kaddish. You're not supposed to do many things unless you have a minyan. I'll just tell you something that I went with my daughter to a synagogue in Atlanta. It was a year ago, probably, a conservative shul in Atlanta. And their main service, I didn't know, was Shabbat morning, and almost nobody came. So we came to the synagogue. There were maybe 6 people there. And then the rabbi opened a little cabinet above. It was the synagogue was the size of this room. So there was a little cabinet, he opened it, and 2 people showed up on the TV screen. That was so the rabbi said, okay, we count people on Zoom. Excellent, still 8 people. So we started the service the way you told the story, Bruce. And because in the beginning of Shabbat, you can do all these songs, or L'chadodi, you don't need a minyan. But when you come to the Chatzi Kaddish and Baruch Hu, you cannot continue. So we got there, and still 2 people on Zoom and 6 people, including the rabbi, in the room. And he said, oh, we don't have a minyan. So somebody left the synagogue and texted somebody, and 2 minutes later, the screen had 4 people. But that's a good somebody, yes.
And Brian said, Mom, I don't know whether I was right or not, but my Catholic brother, he got it yesterday because I jammed in prayer.
What, he said the Kaddish? It's a great idea, but I sometimes I don't know what to do. Because not that I mind saying Kaddish for a Catholic person, I'll be honored to, but I need to know that that's something they wanted. Because I don't know if I want somebody to say a Catholic prayer or a Muslim prayer for me after I die. I'm not saying I don't, I never thought about it, okay? So if there are people I know who would appreciate it, because people ask me the question, we have many people who are not Jewish, were not born Jewish in the synagogue, who lost a parent, okay? So they asked me, should we say Kaddish? I said, if you say it for yourself and you need to say Kaddish, go ahead. Unless you know that your father, your mother would be offended by it. Let them think about it and make a decision. But this is a great idea, can you really do it? I think that today, most people would appreciate it because we're much more open to blessings and prayers from other religions. Think about 50 years ago. Think about even 30 years ago. I don't feel people who are in the hospital and a chaplain comes. Sometimes they say, oh, yeah, go ahead. Doesn't matter what denomination you are. All the prayers are really helpful. Just go ahead. Start praying for me. Other people said, no, I just want my priest, my minister. I want the appropriate prayers. And it's both right and good. It depends what you feel. Okay, let's go to number 5, which is really important. It's in the Mishnah. Moses received Torah at Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the, it's not written here. And this is one of the most important lines, not only in the Mishnah, but in Judaism. Because what this line tells us, that Moses received Torah. Now, the word Torah, I said, sometimes refers to the tablets of the 10 Commandments. Sometimes it refers to the 5 books of Moses. Sometimes it refers to everything, to all the Jewish texts, to all the Jewish knowledge ever. Okay? And even today, when sometimes I go to different classes, and they said, this person's Torah was, meaning that was his teaching or her philosophy, or, okay? So what they're saying here is that Moses was the first to receive the Torah from whom? God. But then what did he do with it? He passed it on to the next leader, who was Joshua. He didn't keep it to himself. He passed it on. And then Joshua passed it to the next generations that they called the elders. And then the elders passed it to the prophets, and then etc. And every generation keeps passing the Torah, but not just passing the same 10 commandments that can never be changed. They pass all the knowledge that was accumulated until their time, meaning from God to Debbie, okay? And then they pass it to the next generation. And Debbie's grandchild one day will pass it on with all the new stuff. So what the rabbis were saying, that the Torah was never really frozen, kept adding interpretations and ideas and different readings, and it's all as valid as it was when Moses received it from God. So now we live, let's say, 100 generations after Moses, and our Torah today still linked to the Torah that Moses received on Mount Sinai, and it still is valid, okay? Because when I get something, it's mine. When Joshua got the Torah from Moses, it was his to interpret, to read, to teach, to study with new people. And that's what they transmitted. That's what they passed on. Okay, so once we get it, it's ours. You get something, it's yours. Okay, so that was a very important message, that the Torah is not these frozen 5 books of Moses, but all the teachings, all the interpretation, which led to Jewish obsession with writing. Not just learning, but writing. Now, when this thing really happened and why sociologically and historically it was important. Because first, Torah was written in stone. How much can you really write in stone or on? Very little, right? It's durable, it stands, you write some important stuff like the 10 Commandments, right? You write a few things, very good. But you need to write more, you want to write more. Stone wouldn't do it. So that was the next generation from stone to clay. Clay and stone, I keep it the same thing because even clay, how much can you write on clay? And the next one was scrolls. Okay, now the first scrolls were actually papyrus. Still a scroll, but they started with papyrus. Animal skin came later. It was an improvement already. And for many years, they used it at the same time. Where did the papyrus come from? Egypt. The Egyptians had it for about 5,000 years. We have papyrus. I don't know what the plural of papyrus. I don't know, but papyrus in plural. They had papyrus for at least 5,000 years. No, sorry, 5,000 years BC, 7,500 years, okay? They had it. Papyrus is great. You can write long things. You can have much larger sheets than this one. You can connect them, okay? So you take this papyrus and that, and you can connect them, and then you roll them, and you have a scroll, okay? Just like the Torah, that the Torah now is written on parchment, on animal skin. But it started, okay, so the transition from stone to papyrus happened, first of all, when they had the technology and when they needed and wanted to write much more, much longer stories. And for the Jews, it was really important because you can take a scroll and use it to teach and to read. Now, most of the stones were written in a temple. Let's say on a column of a tremendously huge temple, they wrote whatever they wrote. You cannot schlep it to wherever. But the scroll, well, you teach a class here, you take it to the class, you put it in the middle, everyone gathers around, right? They were not sitting like here, or they did not have a projector that can project it on the screen behind you. Everyone was gathered around the papyrus or later on the parchment, and that's how they studied. Okay, so that was the next generation. The third generation was the codex. Codex is basically what today we would call a book, because they realized instead of just taking several sheets of parchment and connecting them and creating a very long sheet and then rolling it, we can put one sheet on top of the other, 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 sew them on one side, and wow. And we can use both sides. When you look at the Torah scroll, it's written only on one side. But when you create a codex, remember, I don't use the word book because I said book is the generic word that includes everything. All of a sudden, you can write a lot on both sides, and these things are expensive, okay? You can schlep it easily. And that was the next generation. I want to read only one thing together, and then we will do our project of the day, which I hope will be meaningful and important. Let's go to number 6. This is a great one. I love it. So this is from the Talmud, from Tractate Menachot. Are you with me? Yes. Okay. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Very often in the Talmud, everything that is said in the name of a rabbi or a scholar, but sometimes they quote their teacher. Okay, so Rav Yehuda in this case, and it's not my idea, but that's what I learned from Rav. Rav was super important leader of the community in Babylon. What does Rav mean? Teacher or rabbi. So if you just call a person rabbi, you know that everyone knew who they meant. I mean, he was. So he said it in the name of Rav. When Moses ascended on high, meaning when he went to Mount Sinai, he found the Holy One, blessed be he, meaning God, sitting and tying crowns onto the letters. Have you seen a Torah scroll? You don't have regular letters. Here we have some Hebrew letters, right? But the Torah, the letters in the Torah have little decorations on top of them, right? So the letter Shin, you'll see beautiful decorations. And Moses, God was decorating the letters. You know, it's God. Why wasting the time playing with the beautiful font? Just use the Time New Roman or something that everyone knows and move on with your life, right? It's God. I mean, he has other things to do. So Moses said before God, Master of the universe, what is holding you back? Why wasting your time, right? God said to him, there is a man who will arise at the end of many generations, and Akiva, son of Yosef, is his name. In the future, he will derive from every tiny stroke and crown hips upon hips of laws. God said to him, you know, one day, Rabbi Akiva, okay, a man who will be there, let's say, more than 1,000 years after you, will study the same Torah that I'm giving you. But he won't just look at the letters, at the meaning of the letter. From every crown was the little decorations, from every decoration, from everything, he will learn tons of stuff. What was Moses' reaction? It's so beautiful. Moses said before him, Master of the universe, show him to me. I mean, we have such a genius in the future. I want to meet him. God said to him, turn around. Moses went and said turn around, meaning it's like in a movie, right? Moses turned around and had a glimpse of the future. We saw many movies like that because it's God. God can show him the future. And he wanted to see Rabbi Akiva, who would be alive some 1,200 years later. But God can do it. So Moses turned around and all of a sudden he was around Rabbi Akiva. He went and sat at the end of the 8th row. So Moses went to Rabbi Akiva's school, Rabbi Akiva's yeshiva, study hall, in the future. Now it's really back to the future, right? We are 1,200 years from that moment because Moses wanted to meet the future Rabbi Akiva. So he went and God just dropped him in the yeshiva. We all saw a million movies like that. It's nothing, but in the Talmud, it's interesting. They did not know of that, but that was the image that they had. And where was Moses sitting at the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva? 8th row, with all the really poor students, because they knew how the Greek schools look like. The better you are, the closer you are to the teacher, okay? So many of us probably, when we were students, we always wanted to sit at the back, or at least maybe it was me. But back then, you don't choose your seat, it's chosen for you. And the smarter you are, the closer you are. 8th row was the nosebleeders of the academy, with all the kids who were smoking pot and didn't really study anything. Okay, so And that was Moses, the guy who received the Torah. But in the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva, 1,200 years later, he didn't know anything. Because remember, the idea that each generation adds knowledge, adds interpretation and readings and experience. And so, yeah, 1,200 years, as great as Moses was, bring Einstein today. I didn't think about it until now. And all this AI thing. Well, what? No, he was the smartest person, but he won't know what to do with it. Maybe he would have the ability after a while to learn, but what would he know with modern science? Okay, so he went and said at the end of the 8th row, and he did not understand what they were saying. His strength weakened. Okay, he almost fainted. When Rabbi Akiva came to one particular matter, his students said to him, "My teacher, from where do you know this?" He said to them, "It is the law given to Moses at Sinai." Then Moses' mind was put at ease. There are few laws that have absolutely no explanation. For example, did you see tefillin? What color is tefillin? Black. Must be black. You'll never see. Why? God told Moses on Sinai, we don't know, we don't ask questions. Okay, so this is the phrase, a law that was given to Moses to Sinai. We don't have many of them, but few things, just take it as it is. Okay, we don't know why, but that's why. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva was able to answer everything and had an explanation for everything, but for that particular question, I don't know. Just Moses heard from God and passed it on, and that's how I know it. But my brain doesn't have an explanation. It's not a logical thing. It's a teaching. So Moses felt a little bit better because he got some credit and he realized he's still relevant. But he still couldn't understand a word of that story. Okay? Okay, that's getting sad. So let's finish it. But we'll just do it fast. There's Moses returned and came before the Holy One, blessed be he, and said to him, "Master of the universe, you have such a person, and yet you give the Torah through me? I mean, I'm just a schlepper compared to Rabbi Akiva. He's a genius. I'm just nobody. He should have given the Torah through Rabbi Akiva, not me." And God said to him, I love it, "Be silent, shut up. Thus it arose in my thought." That's what I decided. I'm not asking you, it's not for you to understand. Moses said to him, "Master of the universe, you have shown me his Torah, now show me his reward." God said to him, "Turn around," right? Go back to the future. He turned around and saw them weighing Rabbi Akiva's flesh in the butcher's market, meaning they tortured him to death. Moses said to him, next page, "Master of the universe, this is Torah and this is his reward? I mean, he was the best Torah scholar ever existed, and that's how he's ending his life?" God said to him, "Be silent. Thus it arose in my thought." There are things you don't understand. And we studied that part in a different class about, okay, but I hate to give half stories because that's what they did to me sometimes. Just the nice part of the story, right? Before Bambi's mom died or something. So it's not, if you teach the story, teach the whole thing. So we started with a stone. You couldn't schlep it. You couldn't write much, but it had to be very valid and solid and unchangeable. But very quickly, we moved on to scrolls, because scrolls, you can write as much as you want. They're portable. You move them. And the most important thing, when the temple existed, most of the system was based on the temple, on sacrifices and priests. And when the temple was destroyed at the year of 70, they needed a new center, the Jews. What became the center? The scroll, the teachings, right? No more sacrifice, animal sacrifices or other sacrifices, no more Jerusalem and temple. What they had was their books, their scrolls, which they took with them. And that was the huge acceleration of studying, of teaching, of writing. Very quickly after that, we have the Mishnah and the Midrash and the Talmud and thousands upon thousands of books. They never ended, okay? Because to have a book, you don't need to live in a particular place. You don't need a particular building. You don't need particular people like priests to do anything. You take your book and you study. You gather a few people around you. And if you're lucky, you have somebody who knows a little bit more than you, who can teach you a little bit. That's it. And that's one of the reasons the Jews survived, because they had their books. And the idea that we are the people of the book, the name was given to us by the Muslims. It's not a Jew, we invented it for ourselves. Because whenever you saw Jews, what did they do when they gathered together? They studied. They gathered around the scroll, or later on around the codex, and they studied and they taught and they kept writing, and we never stopped it. Here's what I want us to do in the next few minutes, if you want. So we got you some papyrus, a real one. And we got you a pen that can write on papyrus. That's what and we got you a little bottle. Should you want to host the papyrus in the bottle, okay? You can do anything you want. You can put it in the ocean, you can put it in your bathtub, or you can hide it and let 15 generations later find it and say, what it is? There was this dude that they said was related to me, but what did he mean? Okay. So I don't know, I have many ideas for myself, but I don't want to tell you what to do. But I wanted to write something. If you want it in Hebrew, I'll have many papers here. I can write something in Hebrew for you and you can copy it if you want a word or two in Hebrew. But it doesn't have to be in Hebrew. You can write a message if you want to future people. You can write a line that is really important to you, right? Like if justice is important to you, there's a beautiful line in Deuteronomy, justice, justice shall you pursue. Okay, or in Hebrew, tzedek, tzedek tirdof. That was on the wall of the chambers of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, so that's what she chose to put in her chambers. There is a beautiful line, again, in Deuteronomy has beautiful lines, and you shall choose life, okay, which can mean so many different things to so many people and different times in our life, okay? You can write anything you want and put it in the bottle and do with the bottle what you find appropriate. And again, if you want my help with anything Hebrew, like you want to write your Hebrew name, you want to write part of a blessing, anything you want, I'll be very happy to help you. And this is a time to say a goodbye and thank you for our friends who join us on Zoom. Bye.